Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Don't Tell Me How to Fan. My name is Josh Albrecht, and with me is my good friend, John Taylor. John, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Josh.
Just fine. I think that's kind of the right reaction,
Mhm.
honestly. First of all, again, welcome back. If you're listening to us on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network, we appreciate that. If you're watching us on YouTube at Not Done Yet Media, we appreciate that as well. Last time, John, big talk Packers. We talked a lot about Packers, as we should. That's the number one story in Wisconsin sports and things that we care about right now. And a lot of people wanted to focus on the Bears game and celebrating that, and then kind of looking forward to Bears Packers round two. And you and I were like, okay, but this Broncos game is also pretty important. Ended up that it was very important for all of the wrong reasons. Everything just terrible with Micah Parsons, obviously, and we've been talking about that all week. I'm sure you have too, just in friend groups and everybody. I mean, national media has been going nuts with the Micah Parsons stuff. It's honestly, I'm getting to the point to where it's like, okay, I'm done with it. Let's what else can be said? It just sucks. It
Yeah,
just sucks.
yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. You watch that game and you think to yourself, like, okay, the Packers can do something here. They were up. Everything was feeling good, and then all of a sudden, Christian Watson goes down. Momentum starts feeling pretty bad. Um, uh, you know, Shortly thereafter, that interception, all of a sudden, Micah Parsons goes down with what we now know is an ACL tear, and he will be sidelined until he said September on his own post. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's not great. On that same play, if we find out Evan Williams messed up his knee, is going to be out for a couple weeks. They're saying maybe there's a chance he goes, but on a short week, I'm not holding my breath. That's another obvious problem. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that Zach Tom went out during this game and is also going to be out for a couple weeks. So, Matt LaFleur in his first presser after the game, like on Monday, I think, was talking about how they view a lot of those injuries more day to day, and that doesn't necessarily mean they won't be out for games, but they weren't as bad as they thought. We come to learn Christian Watson went to the hospital in Denver, and then turns out it's maybe just kind of something akin to like an AC sprain of of his shoulder. So,
Yeah. It was kind of insane that of all the injuries besides Micah Parsons, which we kind of knew already, but all the
mhm.
other ones, you didn't think that Watson would have been the first to, have the most likely chance to play on the day of the game. This is being heard. I can't. You would have thought he was out, maybe season for
Mhm.
sure, multiple weeks.
Yeah.
And it's been a very frustrating week of just trying to put together who is actually going to play, who's going to be a part of this game, this very important game. Obviously, LaFleur hasn't been showing his cards, but John, I mean, you brought it up right there. Do you think any of these three guys go Williams, Tom, or Watson?
If I had to put him in order, I think it would go Watson. Yeah, that's the only one. I don't need the other two. I don't think they're going to go. I think there is a chance Watson could go only due to the fact that like it was leaked on his camp that he could probably go. Um, I know players want to get out and play, but he was on the field taking reps today. So it's like the NFL has done away with a lot of the injury report shenanigans, right? Like there was a lot more designations used to question, doubtful, out. They got rid of doubtful, so there's less like haziness involved.
Yeah.
Really limited participants typically tend to mean that they are going to play unless there's like a major setback or they're coming back from a major injury. And while Christian Watson was injured Sunday, it's not like it sidelined him for any amount of time. So that's my number one thing. I don't think Zach Tom goes. I don't think Evan Williams goes. The Evan Williams injury is a knee injury that he apparently suffered last year as well. So
Yeah, not good.
it's going to be
Re-injuries
a
are tough.
couple weeks, and I think like no Roma Dunze, if we can just pivot to the Bears a little bit as we contextualize these conversations. No Luther Burden. So it's going to be a steady mix of um, their running backs and Colston Loveland probably. And so can you live with either Javon Bullard back in safety or Zane Anderson slotting in as the other one or Kitana? There's a lot of safeties in that room that could potentially be paired up with X. The problem is that Evan Williams was bordering on all pro level safety play. If he was a few years in the league longer, I do believe people would be buzzing that he would be an all pro. But he's definitely Pro Bowl caliber right now. So his presence will be missed. So it's just really interesting. This whole Bears game, I don't know how to feel, and I guess I'll counter to you and say, how are you feeling about this game? Getting a chance to process this information on a more daily basis. Clearly,
Yeah. So one of the big things, and you know this about me, that I like to do is I like to break down the scenarios and go through all of the outcomes and then kind of use that to form my opinions and emotions on how I'm feeling about things. And I'm obviously, I think this is going to be a tough match for the Packers. I think it would have been tough even if Parsons would have gotten hurt. I think that just the Bears are a different team this year. It's not a walk in the park, even, no matter what, but especially in Chicago. I think that the fan base in Chicago is ready for this. I think the Bears realize they have a really good opportunity. I don't think that they're looking at this as a trap game. And so it makes me nervous. But then when I start looking at the scenarios, all right, let's say the Bears win, then what? And really, as long as the Packers, even if it's to lose to the Bears, even if they lose to the Bears, if they can beat one of these last three teams, Bears, Ravens, Vikings, and the Lions, yeah, I think as long as they win one, they're in some type of playoff. They're in the playoffs.
they're basically they would. I mean, there's potentials where they lose all three of these games and they still could make the playoffs. Right. Yes. Yeah. They still could even make it. So, they did all of their winning when the team was healthy. And that's, I mean, we lost it. We dropped a couple stupid games. Don't get me wrong. But ultimately, that's all you can ask for. It's we're in a spot where there's going to be some real adversity. Clearly losing Tucker Kraft, Micah Parsons, Elton Jenkins.
Big names. They're big names. But when you look at
Devontae Wyatt,
regardless of how this game goes, we're going to play the Bears again. There's going to be a round 3. Really, this game is just determining, unless things completely fall apart, right? Which we just said. But unless that happens, we're going to play the Bears again. And this is just deciding where they play them. Is it in Green Bay? Is it in Chicago? My hope is then when that time comes and that game happens and round 3 happens with the Bears, well, then Zach Tom is back and Williams is back. And maybe Josh Jacobs' knee isn't as banged up as it is. Maybe they have, an opportunity to let some of these guys, even if it's slowly, get healthy. And then round 3 is bigger and better. And that's the other thing I'm thinking about on both sides. Even if the Packers win this game, they're still going to see the Bears again. So it's crazy to think about, but it also allows a fan like myself to not throw everything into this game because it's, that you're playing them for a third time. John, you've said, we've had the conversation, we had it last week on playing a team 3 times in a season and beating them 3 times in a season is very difficult either way. And if they were going to lose one of the 3 games to the Bears, I'd prefer it be this one over the playoff game. So all of those things are weighing on my mind, but they're kind of making me feel like I will be at peace regardless of what happens in this game, as long as there aren't more injuries or something else that's going to derail the team further.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I definitely think that when you look at this game, I almost think it's not a positive. Would it have been great if they played the Bears in week 18 and there was a little more time for these personnel changes to solidify? Potentially. But, there's that old adage by halfway through the first season, nobody's a rookie anymore. At this point, everyone's playing injured, hurt. Everyone's got bumps and bruises. No one is a rookie anymore, in terms of getting reps and prep in. So I almost like it as okay, the injuries are the biggest punch in the mouth the Packers have faced all season, specifically the last game. So let's see how they deal with this adversity. Because the truth of the matter is they're still in the mix to be a Super Bowl contender. The Rams are clearly the best team in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I don't, they're kind of barely beating the Seahawks. Even without Devontae, they're just a really good football team, and they've shown that. But everybody else, it's any given Sunday. I can't think of a time when there hasn't been more parity in the league. And I feel like I say that every week, but it becomes more and more true. We just keep watching. I mean, Bryce Young beat the Rams, and we're talking about them as being the clear-cut favorites. And I think they've earned that conversation. So my big thing is I think I'm weirdly excited. It's a division game. If you can't get guys who maybe weren't being relied on as heavily to rise to the occasion and kind of solidify that front line for Jordan. Make sure their hands are on the ball if they're running an out route. All of those little things, that all the big penalty mistakes. Like this is the time to it's time to really,
dial it in.
Tighten your chin strap, dial it in, go play hard football against your biggest rival. And the Bears didn't make it any easier for us figuring it out with Ben Johnson. Everyone knows that. But in that same vein, there's been a lot of hubris on their angle, thinking they've arrived. And I think the Packers could very easily still go down into Soldier Field while it's still in Chicago, Illinois, and beat the Bears. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. And if they don't, like you said, it's not the worst thing. But as long as they're live dogs, we just got to be thinking long term. How do we get to a spot where we can be competitive until we get to that NFC Championship? And I think this team is still talented enough to do that. If Christian Watson plays, it opens up the offense so much that I think you have to go back to that mentality where putting up points will be our best defense. And then our defense is still pretty good.
Which we're very used to as Packers fans, because that's what we went through the entire Rodgers era, was winning and losing games after scoring 38 plus points. And so this shouldn't come as a surprise. It's not necessarily my favorite. I prefer the type of balanced football that this Packers team had when you had Micah Parsons and you were keeping, the opposing offenses to under 20 points. Yeah, that was way more fun. But it's not like this way of playing football is completely uncommon to Packers fans. I do think, though, as well, to your point of what you were saying, that this is kind of a test. Jeff Hafley said earlier in this week that, this is what we get players ready for. We let players, we train the next in line to be ready for when these moments happen. That's what we do as coaches. And man, I was amped in that presser with what he said, and I was ready to run through a wall. So I'm sure his guys are too, but now's the time where talk is done, walk the walk, and I think it's a good test to see, okay, the fan base, certain people in the fan base, media have felt like season's done, team's done. Others have said, why would you think that? This team could play just fine. This game against the Bears is the perfect test to see who was right. Because I feel like even if they lose this game, if it's a miserable loss, we'll learn a lot from it. And if it's a close loss or a win, we'll also learn a lot from it. And that will allow us to get a better gauge on how we feel about this team through the rest of the season and hopefully a playoff run.
Cool. I have the Packers still beating the Bears 27-24. I think the Bears are still a flawed enough football team for us to be able to go down there. And Micah's one man, and there's a lot of guys who need to step up to replace that production, but they're not complete scrubs. So we thought they were contenders before they got them. So I think they win 27-24.
I think that the Bears win. I think it's 34-27. And I'm basing that more on just their offense taking advantage of our defense. And I'd love for the Packers defense to prove me wrong. There are plenty of other things that happened in the world of Wisconsin sports and things that we are very excited to talk about, including some Brewers news, a Brewers trade that happened that had me a little confused, but I'm very interested to get your take on it, John. Brewers, who are not playing baseball right now, but they are making some trades, and it was not a trade that I expected, but I should probably just be used to that because I don't remember the last time the Brewers did have a trade that was one that I was expecting or went the way that I thought it would. The Brewers traded away Isaac Collins and Nick Mears for an outfielder.
Nope. You're getting some of their signings because the Brewers are actually doing stuff this offseason. Nothing too crazy. The big trade is they traded Isaac Collins and Nick Mears for Angel Zerpa, 100-mile-per-hour throwing lefty.
Yes, a left-handed pitcher.
To the Kansas City Royals. From the Kansas City Royals. Yeah.
Do you have any – the only news I have on him, and maybe this is why I thought it was an outfielder and just someone I was going away with, was my buddy who's a huge Kansas City Royals fan who texted me when the trade happened and said, yeah, we fleeced you on that. And I went, oh, great. Okay. That's it. That's the most of my analysis. How much do you know about Zerpa? Have you looked?
I would say this. I think it's twofold. I think the Brewers are doing Brewers things, which are finding pitchers with elite stuff that maybe hasn't been tapped into yet. The pitching lab is incredible. He has a hard sinker, which at his arm angle yields like a 62% ground ball rate, which is considered elite. There's a bunch of advanced baseball metrics that I don't claim to know all of them, and I won't bore anyone watching or listening on the radio, but according to Jack Stern, who is a Milwaukee Brewers analyst, Zerpa's 117 stuff plus, that's right, that's a real metric, in last year tied him with Abner Uribe among qualified relievers. So his pitch is just nasty in the way that Uribe's slider is. It's just like, it's an elite pitch, and when you can touch 100 and you have an elite pitch like that, and it creates ground balls, it's worth trying to figure out what you can do with them. And the Brewers are the best in the major leagues at taking pitchers with talent and turning it into production. So that part of it has me really excited. Matt Arnold immediately was like, we think his stuff could be starting pitcher caliber. It'd be interesting to see the guys on the Microbrew podcast, which is like Kurt Hogue and J.R. Radcliffe. They were saying like they would not be surprised if they needed to add like a fourth pitch. Like they love teaching guys a cutter when they can throw that hard for just different movement, and that would give them a 4-pitch mix. So there's opportunities that way. The other thing that's really exciting, and this is going to be a multifaceted conversation, and that's what makes this trade in a vacuum not interesting, but in a holistic view way more interesting, is there's a lot of buzz apparently around Trevor McGill. And the Brewers are about to lose him. And so between him and Peralta, there's just a lot of conversations about can you get quality pieces back in these trades? And Zerpa could slot in the back end of like a setup or a closer role alongside Abner Uribe if you think Uribe is ready. Because if people listening on the radio remember, Uribe was originally slotted to be that closer until Trevor just kind of took the ball and ran with it when he was out that season. Devin Williams out with his back injury for the first half of the season. So the Brewers have kind of had a contingency plan kind of going in the wings. So that's what makes him so interesting, is that he's just untapped potential at this point. And I think the Brewers wouldn't make that trade if they didn't feel like that. So.
I believe the Brewers front office, Matt Arnold, they've been looking at Zerpa for a while. This wasn't a new blip on their radar. This was something they've been analyzing and wanting to see if they could work something for Zerpa for a minute. So that gives me a little bit of faith. It's just, I think I was surprised by who he gave away. Mm-hmm. I didn't necessarily think that Nick Mears or Isaac Collins were guys that were on the trading block. I understand obviously that there are very few people on the team that are on, that aren't available for a trade. But those weren't the guys that were discussed. And so I was surprised that those were the guys that were on the move.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is that when you look at contracts too, now we're having different conversations about like where these players add and subtract value. Like Zerpa has 3 years of control still and an option. So it's like a team friendly contract. Nick Mears didn't have that flexibility anymore. And if you look at a lot of like the regression indicators, it seemed like both Nick Mears and Isaac Collins were kind of regressing to the mean as to where they think where most people had them slotted as where they were going to like be in terms of being baseball players. I'm wording this so terribly, I apologize. But what I mean by that is last season we saw IMC come back down to earth a little bit by his defensive struggles in the outfield. He forgot, it felt like he forgot how to play defense. I mean, really what happened last year is if you look at it, he had 3 incredible months of hitting and a full season of incredible plate discipline, which I don't, no one loves losing a guy who can actually not swing the bat. Especially who can take pitches. But if he produces the way he did, let's say from September on, that's not somebody who you can build an outfield alongside, long term with. If you look at Nick Mears, while he was a good reclamation project, he's just like anybody. The Brewers, I think, could pick in a bucket blindfolded and grab another Nick Mears, right? So you talk about 2 guys who have proven that they can do their positions serviceably. And the Royals, I think if they are excited about that, good for them. Your friend is seeing the big numbers on both of them and going, perfect. That's what this team needs. And I would say enjoy them while they last doing that. Because I don't think you're going to get a full season of production in either of those players long term. And if IMC is making me eat my words, so be it. But You know the Brewers, they're going to keep wheeling and dealing,
100%.
getting bites at the apple. They will cut bait on players the minute they think they're losing their stuff, whether that be hitting, defense, pitching.
Yes.
It does not matter. They will recoup value as soon, if it's a bell curve, the minute it starts dropping like Raging Bull down in Gurnee, Illinois, they are selling those players.
Yeah,
So
they're moving on, whether the fan base thinks it's time or not. So talking about the names that you brought up, that the national media has been talking about, obviously Peralta's been the biggest one, but then McGill as well. Do you think there are going to be any other moves, any other players that are on this roster currently that won't be here by the time spring training comes around?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a real chance that I think Freddie Peralta gets traded. I think if you look at Freddie, the contract he's going to be owed once this contract is over, I think there's a very real chance Freddie gets traded, simply because you look at all the guys who signed free agent deals this year in this offseason already. Yeah. Freddie's better than all of them. So teams are going to give up real assets to acquire a pitcher of Freddie's caliber.
So tell me what in a perfect scenario, I don't even need names of specific players, but what position are you looking to fill with a big name? Because the thing that I don't want to see is the classic, well, we're trading Freddie away for the future. I don't want it to be for 4 guys in farm systems. We already have a good farm system. We're waiting on guys to come up. You know, we're probably a year or 2 out on a few of these guys. So what positions are you thinking are the most dire needs to fill that you would want to trade Freddie away for?
I think I can get a little more specific. I think they could probably get an outfielder from like the Red Sox for Freddie. I think there's like a really real chance that there's a lot of talent in Boston right now, especially in the outfield, in terms of hitting and play. And I think that if they're looking to find somebody who can play alongside Jackson Churio for the next couple of years until their next crop of prospects start getting ready to come up, I think that would be something they could very easily do.
But do the Brewers, is that an area of focus? I felt like maybe replacing Ortiz, stuff more infield is where they were looking, or, you know, some type of monster at first, just something of the sort there, not as much as outfield play. You have Churio, Yelich is still out there if he's not DHing. You know, you got
Sal. Garrett hasn't been healthy. You just traded IMC. Blake Perkins is okay. You know what I'm saying? It's like Yelly's only getting older, so I think they're trying to get him into a DH role. I think they're trying to get. I mean, an offensive.
They really have. I feel like he took a lot of DH roles this last season.
Yeah, assignments. Yeah, he has and he hasn't. I'm just saying the big thing about baseball is, especially for the Brewers, like they need to extract value, as much value as they can for their piece. It doesn't matter for filling a hole. If they could make the first baseman better, Andrew Vaughn, thanks a lot, but we got a slugging first base. You know what I mean? Like, correct. This is the type of trades that the Brewers need to make. And I just think when you look at who can offer what, who could use Freddie Peralta, who has enough talent, and when you talk about getting guys in that could immediately make any sort of spot on our lineup better, I just think an outfielder is an obvious choice. I would love for them to get a shortstop. However, shortstops get treated like quarterbacks in the NFL. And I don't think you're going to get Freddie straight up for a starting caliber shortstop better than like Bryce Terang. And then you talk about, like, does Trevor get traded for maybe a third baseman, a second baseman? You know, there's a lot of shuffling. You know, last year we were going into the offseason thinking, okay, Caleb Durbin's going to go to second, Bryce to shortstop. And what are we going to do at third? Joey seemed to be okay. It didn't shake out that way because the injuries, we never really found it. But, you know, I think trades are likely because I just don't think the Brewers are satisfied with how the season ended. And obviously no one is. But what I mean is, like, we can't just go, well, the team did well last year. Like, you can't assume the same production if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, right? Staying the same is just as bad as falling behind.
Yeah, but there is something too to be said about team chemistry and the fact that, you know, this having a team play together. And, you know, baseball is still not a super individual sport. I mean, it's not the same as football per se, but I don't disagree with you. I would be surprised if they had multiple more trades. I think that they'll move one piece.
You
One
think
more piece.
either Freddie or Trevor?
I don't
Okay.
think they're moving both. I would be
Yeah.
very, very surprised. I just think at that point you move those two and you bring them in, especially for people that aren't pitching, and you're looking at a very different baseball team, and
Yeah.
good or bad. I just don't think that you won 97 games. You were
Mhm.
the number one team in Major League Baseball at the end of the regular season, and then you're going to have a very different identity the immediate next year. That's a take.
Mhm.
That's a bold move. And I'm not saying that if Matt Arnold made it, I'd be surprised. But I'd be surprised.
I'm not going to tell you how to fan, but I hear you on that. I just think that every year teams like the Brewers are forced to really reevaluate their talent and what they can acquire with that talent. And I think this is a year where the rubber meeting the road on several trades wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if I'd like them. I don't want to trade Freddie. I don't want to trade Trevor. But I can see a path forward as to why you would. And ultimately, if it returns an offensive piece, I think that's the biggest thing there, right? I think replacing Isaac Collins's hitting and production isn't going to be that challenging. So,
Sure.
Yelly's got a DH. I think if you can find somebody, that's just where I went. And that's after talking to several buddies of mine who are way more knowledgeable about baseball than I am, admittedly. So, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. It's fun that the Brewers seem to be signing players, a lot of minor league contracts, a couple trades, like at least they're in the mix, which is really awesome.
Yeah. I'm also way more happy to talk trade talk when it comes to the Brewers than I am the Milwaukee Bucks, because boy, is that narrative, you would think, run its course, but it hasn't, because for the first time since all this came out, Giannis finally talked, and now there's even more things to discuss with the Milwaukee Bucks, who have been struggling, very, very much so, without Giannis in the lineup. We've covered Packers, we've covered Brewers. Now it's time to talk a little bit of the Milwaukee Bucks, which have not been a fun topic to discuss. And honestly, I would have thought we could skip this week. That is, of course, except for the fact that then Giannis came out and he finally talked to the media. Before he actually addressed the media, he was on the Thanasis podcast, his brother Thanasis's podcast, and he said nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Nothing
production team. If you could just add the Milwaukee Brewers counter ticker to the Thanasis pod. Oh, it was 0. Oh, they didn't mention the Milwaukee Bucks a single time. Okay, never mind.
Got it.
No
Yeah.
worries, production team. You can ignore that video graphic. Yeah.
100%.
What? Did you listen to the pod?
I listened to enough to where I went, okay, they're not doing, okay, got it.
Mhm.
They're not doing anything here. It was very obvious that it was a, hey, we got to have him on spot. You got to remember that even when it comes to podcasts, these things are about money. And so sponsors, I'm sure, said, hey, we got to get Giannis on this thing. So honestly, I thought at that point, I went, okay, so he's still not talking. Got it. That's going to be it. That's where we're going to be at. And then he did. And then he talked. Now, leading up to this, there have been multiple reports going back and forth and blah, blah, blah. I mean, from last week to this week of, okay, well, now Giannis isn't asking for a trade, but now the Bucks are trying to find new pieces to build around him. Oh, okay, that's a different conversation than we heard. Weird. Where'd that come from? That seems strange. And then it was, Giannis he's not the one talking to them, his agent is, and we're going, well, yeah, but that's still Giannis, right? That's Giannis's camp. So that doesn't make us feel any better. And then Giannis came out and Giannis talked to the media, and essentially he said that same thing, John, did he not? Of, that was my agent, not me. What did you take from Giannis's comments?
Not a whole lot, which is really annoying. I want to live in a world where I want to believe the words Giannis says as opposed to the thoughts and actions that they might imply, because I feel like he's always been very direct and he's always been honest. He has never done anything to make me think that he doesn't mean what he says. However, when we are constantly having reports coming out specifically saying things like Giannis is reevaluating. Giannis and his management team are having conversations with the Bucks. There are plans to sit in dialogue. It's hard to take that at face value when he says, I am not the one speaking. it's like, well, who sent the orders? You know, it's like,
Well,
it's
now
like a
here's
mob
my
boss. It's like a mob boss being like, whoa, I wasn't there shaking down that grocery store. I'm not culpable. It's like, well,
correct.
you are culpable. They're not doing it for fun. And
But
there is a line, he did have a line where he said, once the season starts, I'm locked in. I'm all in on this team. I'm all in on my teammates. I'm all about winning. I do not handle anything non-basketball related. He went as far as to say, I don't talk about endorsements. I don't talk about anything. And I do believe that to be true. But to act like the agent is operating on some directive Giannis gave 7 months ago and was like, well, they lost enough games. Time to go talking. Like, I just have to call shenanigans.
okay, well, okay,
Malarkey.
but I can see it a little bit. I think that there truly is something about that and I clearly have never had an agent. I didn't play professional sports either. But the stories that I've heard and from the people that I've talked about, like it is kind of true, right? That it's not like these players and their agents talk every single day for multiple hours a day about what's next, right? If they did that, those athletes probably aren't very good athletes because they're not in the zone, they're not focused on what they need to be. It's the reason why I hired an agent was because I don't have time to worry about it, right? And so I need to have an agent be the one that's negotiating for me on my behalf. I could see Giannis's agent wanting to do that. I could also see Giannis's agent doing that because they know that if they push those buttons, it's going to make the Bucks do more to try to build things around Giannis. Maybe Giannis is telling his agent, I don't want to leave Milwaukee. I want to keep winning championships. Or playing for a championship. I want to be competitive. And his agent is going, well, the only way to do that is to make sure that the Bucks are constantly trying to get new pieces, make new additions to put the right pieces around Giannis. So I'm going to push buttons, do whatever I have to make my client happy, to do what they need. I did think it was interesting, though, when he said he didn't like how much all of the media attention around him was affecting the team. That was the first point that he said that I went, but you can stop that.
Mm-hmm.
Up to that point, I've been like, it is not his responsibility to come out and have to say all of these people are lying. All of the national media are not telling the truth, or there is truth to this argument, or everyone's been saying Giannis can be the one to squash this. And I went, that's not his responsibility. He doesn't owe us that. Okay. He doesn't have to. But if he's saying, I'm not happy about the fact that this is affecting my teammates, well, I can tell you how you could become happy about it. Squash it.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, I don't know. I said, I think 2 weeks ago, when there's smoke, there's smoke. I just think there could be fire. I will say I do feel better about places like Chris Haynes, who, interesting how he had every scoop on the Bucks when Dame Lillard was on the team and now has no scoops except for like weeks later. Now that Dame's gone, it's very interesting about how stuff was getting leaked to the media. It's very
super interesting.
Very interesting. I will say I do like that there's been a shift that people were saying, like, people were calling, trying to ask about Giannis, and now the Bucks are trying to go big game hunting, right? Big trade hunting for Giannis to keep him here in Milwaukee. I will say a lot of the trades or pieces that have been floating around, they don't really move me that much. I'm concerned that it would be a big trade for the sake of making a big trade, which, the real nasty implication of all of this is if the Bucks don't trade Giannis and they keep trading every future asset, we're not staring down a year or two rebuild. It's going to be a decade of bad Bucks basketball. You need picks in the NBA. And how do you get picks back? You trade good players. And if you don't have any good players around Giannis anymore because of everything else, how do you rebuild a basketball team? So I'm not saying I want Giannis gone. I've heard a huge sentiment where people just are throwing their hands up and saying, it's clear he doesn't want to be here, just trade him. I'm not doing that to the big man. If you're not watching a video, I have a giant painting of Giannis I bought from a local Milwaukee artist. His book brought me to tears. I'm not interested. I'd rather watch a bunch of bad Bucks basketball and watch Giannis retire a Buck. So that is where I'm coming from. I will say,
let's go. Yes.
I will say, yes. I will say, I like that. They have to go all in around Giannis. Giannis needs to make that choice. If he gets traded that is going to be a bummer. There's no way around it. That's not riveting radio or podcasting, but man, is that going to be a bummer. But they need to be smart about their trades. They need to have harder conversations with Giannis to make sure that they're doing smart trades, not just doing things to keep Giannis happy.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
John, I've been thinking about this. Why is it just trades, right? Why can't it be a little bit of the LeBron-esque stuff happen with Giannis? Why can't we have Giannis's agent and, making cases for free agents? Is it not like other sports? Are you telling me that other players don't become available in the NBA? Like, obviously I know that's not the case, right? The Bucks added one very recently, but why can't that be the mindset as much as trades of just cutting some cap from some of the contracts we have now that we're not getting anything, not getting a sack of potatoes for in trades? Why can't we just wait for those to fall off and then go and buy someone that does want to come play with Giannis?
Well, that's what a beautiful question to bring up the last little point about his press conference, which is actual real news. He brought up the fact that it is not just a calf strain. It's actually one of those soleus strains that had ended his 2023-2024 season. That we went thinking calf strain 2 to 3 weeks to a soleus strain is more like 4 to 6 weeks. If we're talking about December 3rd, that's putting him somewhere in the middle of January, right? Giannis would never want to tank. However, if he doesn't play basketball for 6 weeks, this season might be over before it begins. If Giannis and the Bucks can't find a trade partner that makes sense for Giannis, how easily can the Bucks talk about trading movable assets to free up cap space so that way next year they can do exactly what you're talking about? The issue is the contracts for the Bucks were so large that it was impossible to just sign free agents above what's the word I'm looking for? Vet min, right? We got a lot of guys that you wouldn't expect to sign for vet mins for Giannis. However, we didn't have the cap flexibility. Obviously, Dame's wave and stretch leaves about $20 million of dead cap on the books each season. That's going to be something worth navigating. But if you can unload a Bobby contract, if you can unload that Kuzma contract, but the problem is Kyle Kuzma's been playing pretty well. Hard to want to lose that guy. But
they're still losing.
Yeah, well, yeah. At the time of this release on Saturday, the Bucks have lost both against the Raptors and the Nets, a 45-point loss, the worst Bucks loss maybe in Giannis's tenure. And I know he wasn't on the court, but this is what we're dealing with. It's a bad basketball team. I have to eat crow on this. I thought that they were going to be younger and athletic, but apparently being younger and more athletic doesn't translate to rebounds or ball security. So it's just a bad team right now. And I think they are going to have to make trades, but if Giannis is out for 6 weeks, they should be able to trade and tank. And hopefully it can be a vision of the next year and the year after that with a little more cap space, some flexibility. Maybe that gets Giannis excited to stick around. But until then,
I think the Bucks still need to move on from Doc.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that should have happened a while ago. But they don't want to pay.
That. Is that
they don't want to pay 3 coaches. Like,
well, too bad.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we're in a really awful purgatory right now. There's no 2 ifs, ands, or buts about it. So
yeah. It's a rough time in Wisconsin sports. A lot of things hindering, right? We're worrying about what may or may not be the life of the Bucks, with Giannis. Usually we'd be able to say, well, thank the Lord, we have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers season coming to a close in less than a month, at least with the regular season. And we're still not sure how that's going to go after last week against the Broncos. A lot of question marks up in the air. And now we have the game against the Bears, Packers-Bears, round 2 tonight at the time that everyone's hearing this on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network. As we said, our predictions, John, yours again?
27-24.
Packers,
correct. Yes, 27-24 Packers.
I went 34-27 Bears.
Boo this man. Boo.
I know. That's fine.
Boo.
You can boo me. Just don't tell me how to fan. I hope I'm proven wrong. I do worry about this Packers defense. It's a lot of talk, and I need to see it. I need to see it in action. And what a good freaking week and time it would be for this Packers defense to prove me wrong. As I mentioned too, even regardless of what happens in this game, John, the Packers will still have life. They're not eliminated from anything. if they don't win this game. Heck, they could lose this game and still win the division if they win their last two games and the Bears lose their last two games. So as exciting as this game is going to be in Chicago, Packers-Bears round 2, just remember, folks out there listening or watching, it's not deciding much of anything, depending on what happens afterwards. There's still a ton of different options that can be played out.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing this Packers-Bears game is going to show is the roadmap on how far into the playoffs the Packers can actually get. So very, very well said, Josh. Very well said.
Absolutely agree with you, my friend. And I hope that everyone has a great night. They enjoy a Packers win. That I am hoping for with you. And we appreciate you joining us on Not Done Yet Media and on the Wisconsin Sports Radio Network for Don't Tell Me How to Fan. I'm Josh Albrecht. That's John Taylor. Make sure to tune in next time because we are not done yet.